Welcome to the Plant Fit Summit, bringing you the best in plant-based health and fitness. This is Luke and Toby, and today we have Dr. Michael Klaper. Dr. Klaper is a practicing doctor, internationally recognized teacher, and sought-after speaker on diet and health. He has practiced medicine for more than 40 years and is a leading educator in applied plant-based nutrition and integrative medicine. We start the conversation with Dr. Klaper sharing about how our immune system works. Enjoy the presentation.
Hi, well, thank you for the opportunity to explore this very important subject. And of course, as my colleagues in immunology and hematology will tell you, you can spend an entire medical career just homing in on that one question: how does the immune system protect us from this onslaught of microbes that we face every day, most of which are benign? As the information about the microbiome has become evident, it's clear that we carry trillions of microbes in our gut. Our hair and skin follicles are all populated with microbes, and most of our DNA is not human, actually, only 10% human. And so we do live in this balance with these other entities, and they can be fearsome, as we're finding out with COVID virus, but we've known with everything from cholera to staphylococcus. These are powerful organisms that we cohabit with, and yet we're able to grow and thrive and not have to deal with chronic infections and constant recurring infections. And it's amazing to me that the oral surgeons can do surgery in the mouth, open up a flap, down to the jawbone, do what they do there, chisel away bone, sew it up, and it's by the next day it's almost healed. It's remarkable. How does our body do this? And when we do get sick, and every once in a while I certainly will, why? What happened? What changed in our body that allowed these microbes to gain the upper hand if they have hands there? So lots of things to consider. So starting at the top of your question there, how does our immune system protect us? There's so many levels of response that our body has. Just the general health of our tissues. You need an intact skin. You need healthy mucous membranes in your mouth, lining your nose, etc. If they're intact, if they have the vitamins and minerals they need to maintain tissue integrity, and here minerals like zinc and vitamins like vitamin D and vitamin C play a role in membrane integrity. That's important. When viruses, and realize that there's viruses in the air, viruses in the water, these are ancient organisms, and we've been dealing with them. Our immune system's been dealing with them for as long as we've had a human body here. And when we do breathe them in or we swallow them, they're on the surface of our food. The first thing they run into, the first barriers, is a thin layer of mucus. Well, you want that mucus nice and moist. You don't want to get dehydrated. Drinking enough water is important, so the mucus is able to flow and get to where it needs to. In that mucus already, it's so brilliant and elegant. There's antibodies or proteins, IgA antibodies in our mucus, in our nose, in our saliva, in the mucus that lines our intestine. And these antibodies are already made against organisms and food antigens that we don't want into our body. You need sufficient protein in the diet. Not saying people should go taking cups of protein powder here, but again, a healthy diet that the immune system it's a system, and it requires all the nutrients that every other system, that your muscles need, that your brain needs, that your nerves need. It needs protein and vitamins and minerals and essential fatty acids. A healthy, balanced diet. We can take a look at the individual parts, but as Dr. Colin Campbell tells us in his book Whole, it's the whole food stream coming through there. Nature's packed all of these wonderful vitamins and minerals that we need in the vegetables and the fruits and the meat and the nuts and the beans and the seeds. We can, as I said, we can, get out the toolbox and disassemble the various gears and all this stuff. But it comes down to that, a real cornerstone is a whole food, plant-based diet. And if you can, produce is becoming precious these days with the food disruption. But, that's the most important food in your diet. Keep that fresh stuff going. Keep those greens and those salads going. They're your best vitamin pills going. So to double back, what do we need? And we've just scratched the surface. There's other layers of immunity here, the inflammatory response, blood flow. All of this is important in keeping this very complex organism, functioning properly and keeping us able to ward off these invaders. So certainly a whole food plant-based diet, and I'll be glad to talk about individual issues there. But again, as far as the whole organism, get enough sleep. I know from my nights in the emergency room and trying to, when I've got projects to do and I'm going on 3 hours sleep and I think I'm getting away with something, doesn't take long before my throat gets scratchy and my muscles get achy and I know I'm getting sick. And there's something really restorative about sleep and protective, and this is really a time to not fall behind on that. They said drink enough water. If you go back to our ancient roots, if you believe in evolution at all, we were 1 million years ago on the African savannah. We would travel with our foraging bands, pulling up roots and running away from leopards, etc. We were physically active all day. We would run, we would climb trees, we would squat down, we would lift things. Well, today we sit in front of computers, and as you sit, the weight of the lungs and the rib cage pushes down, the bottom parts of the lung, the alveoli kind of close down. You just breathe off the top of your lung volume. And that's not a good thing. Mucus will start to settle in the lower parts of the lung. Stagnation on any level is not good in the body, including secretions in your lungs. We're meant to breathe deeply. So go out and take a walk every day. If you're sitting, get up every hour from the computer, take 3 or 4 deep breaths, do some squats, keep that blood flowing, keep those lungs moving. That's important as well. And finally, and I'm sure we're only at the beginning of our discussion. Well, it's not really finally, but stress plays a role. They talk about stress. These are stressful times, no doubt. And I'm fortunate I've got a profession that hopefully will continue to support me, but a lot of folks, millions and millions of people have lost their jobs. They don't know where the rent's coming from. They don't know how they're making their car payment. They've got empty shelves and hungry kids, and talk about stress. My heart goes out for these people. And I think the response of our government has been tragic and hopelessly inept. And a lot of people are suffering from that. And that's another issue. But so let me say that I recognize stress with a big S. That's huge. But to whatever you can to not react to the small stresses. If someone leaves dirty dishes in the sink, just do the dishes. Don't get into a thing with them and conflict and all these things. It just doesn't matter. In the flow of life, your serenity, your peace is more important. Because when we're under stress, the body reacts, and one way it reacts is the adrenal glands put out a gush of cortisol, which lowers your immunity. Well, you don't want to walk around with high cortisol levels, and so this is a time to let little stuff be little stuff. And it's mostly small stuff. The truth of it is the things we react to, and do the best you can to help your neighbors and friends with the big stuff. And that's a real key to getting through this. So. Long answer, and I'll be glad to look at any of those different facets. But we're holistic organisms, and we have to respond holistically. It all matters as far as if you guys imagine what a healthy, balanced life is. Well, that's what's a good immune system set is as well. So do what you can do to get as healthy and balanced as you can.
Thank you so much for setting the stage, so to speak, for our conversation. That was great. I would love to find out how many of those, like pathogens or bacteria or viruses do we even have to fend off every day, just to get an idea of how important the immune system is?
Oh, it'd be hard to get your mind around it. In every cubic millimeter of saliva, of course, there's billions of bacteria and viruses and yeast cells, etc. Any one of which, if they get into your bloodstream or into your brain, could cause mischief there. But even in our blood and our brain, as the blood passes through the liver and the spleen, there's immune cells that clean our blood. It's such. The more I learn about the body, the more in awe I am of it. You read about these defenses, and I put the book down and applaud on some of these. It's just so brilliant. And as one who's, I'm an urgent care doc, and I see skin abscesses, etc. You see what Staphylococcus in the skin can do. But it happens especially with people with poor immune systems, the folks who've been living on the snack foods and their blood is all high blood sugar and they don't have the vitamins and minerals to really get on with good wound healing. Oh, the bacteria love that. And so we wind up tipping the balance. And when you see the infections, the cellulitis spread through the tissues there and destroy important structures. So it's all important there. And I'm going to have a T-shirt made. Your body is never not looking. There's no fooling it. Who are you kidding? Your immune system knows what you eat. Your arteries know. Your liver knows. Your fat tissues know. And so this is time. If you've got to eat something, make it something that grew out of the garden. Like cucumbers, tomato salads, vegetable soups, steamed veggies, lentil stews. Eat those healthy whole plant foods and your body will know what to do with it. It's what we're supposed to be running on anyway.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you bring up, because it sounds like even though we might not be physically sick at any moment, we might still be occupying our immune system by eating certain things or certain behaviors. So if you could break down what could be occupying our immune system, even if we're not physically sick?
That's a very important point. The fact that if we look again through the COVID window, who really dies, who winds up on the respirator, the ventilators, and don't get off? Well, it's people, and you're asking a physician. There are several pre-existing conditions. First and foremost is obesity. The obese folks get hit worse, and they are less likely to get off that ventilator. Why? Obesity is a state of inflammation. When there's lots of fat in the abdominal cavity, that fat is metabolically active, and it puts out these molecules called inflammatory cytokines, and they mess up your lymphocytes' abilities to produce antibodies, etc. Obesity is a state of inflammation, and your immune system's occupied by that low-grade background percolating inflammation. It can't be expected to run optimal efficiency when it's dealing with inflammatory molecules, etc. So the obese folks, and again, I'm sure we'll loop back to this, but a whole food plant-based diet helps obesity melt away. It's the key to preventing that and reversing that. Second, the folks with diabetes. Why? Because if you've got poorly controlled diabetes and your tissues are saturated with sugar, their urine is sweet for a reason. Their kidneys are so the whole tissues are saturated with sugar. Well, the microbes love that. It's a great culture medium. And high sugar levels inhibit the lymphocytes from getting on with making antibodies, etc. So the diabetics are kind of sitting ducks, chickens, whatever, pick a bird, but they're certainly at high risk. The folks who eat a lot of salt and fat and have artery disease and have high blood pressure, their heart doesn't pump as well, so they get low-grade heart failure. That makes blood back up into their lungs, and so now their lungs are congested with blood and fluid. Well, the microbes love that kind of lung tissue. It's easier for them to invade the folks with the heart failure, etc. Well, these are all diseases of diet: high blood pressure, and diabetes, and obesity. It's from eating all the oils and fats and dairy products and flour products and the processed, junky, animal-based, overly salty, sugary, fatty diet that passes for the standard Western dietary pattern. Well, the answer is stop doing that. It's like running diesel fuel through a gasoline burning engine. No, it's going to clog up your fuel lines and follow the spark plugs. But put proper gasoline in there, runs great, and we're plant-eating creatures. We are plant-eating simians, like our bonobo and gorilla cousins are up in the trees eating leaves and fruit. That's what they're designed to do. Well, we've got basically the same digestive system. We got fingers on our hands, not claws, and and you keep putting in those soups and salads and greens and plant foods, and the body hums along, and the obesity melts away, and the sore joints stop hurting, and the psoriatic skin clears up, and the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing, and the migraine headaches go away, and these diseases resolve, they reverse, as well as the obesity and diabetes and high blood pressure that puts you at risk for COVID. So, in a way, there's kind of there's some terrible poetic imagery here. In a way, it's the big scythe, that the death figure has, pairing the population of the unwell. And I must admit, and we'll get to this as well, but it's poetic that the animals in the slaughterhouses, the folks on the line couldn't hear the cries of the animals down in the slaughterhouse. So the animals said, we couldn't hear that. Well, you'll hear this. And let's take those people off the processing line with the disease and shut down the slaughterhouse. And there's some poetic irony about this whole thing. But back to the medical side, this is a message from the animals to say stop eating us, and a message from our body saying to the folks who are obese and diabetic and higher blood pressure folks, those have been chronic problems that you'll deal with someday. What the COVID virus does has put it right in front of, this is a threat to you now, your obesity and your diabetes and your high blood pressure. Use this time, use these weeks, you're home anyway, start eating healthy, go out for a walk, come out of this tunnel leaner, healthier, with a stronger immune system. So if you do run into this virus, it's just a couple days of a cough and some fluey, achy feelings, and it's done. So all the way around, all roads lead to Rome, all roads lead to a healthy plant-based diet and a sane, loving lifestyle.
Yeah, you already mentioned how plant-based diet and that is full and rich in vitamins and minerals is important for our skin tissue and our mucus to protect us against pathogens coming in. So let's say someone does have brittle skin or there's a wound and something comes in. What happens next? Let's say either bacteria or virus passes through. What happens next?
Right. So this is a fascinating question. And again, we all have to plead a lot of ignorance there. I worked in a lot of emergency rooms, and people come in with these lacerations, and I studied plastic surgery. I do a good laceration repair. But I know that I'm just a mechanic. I'm just putting those wound edges together here, and I do it as artistically and as beautifully as I can. But it's the body. I don't know how to spin capillaries across that wound margin there. I don't know how to make collagen fibers and run that low grade inflammatory reaction, and then how to stop that. Wound healing is a miracle on this. The closer you look, it's like fractals. The closer you look, the more it breaks up into smaller and smaller amazing pieces, and it just leaves one in awe and humility here. We ask, how does that happen? But there's no question when someone comes in and they clearly have a break in the skin that's infected, and that infection is headed north up into their important organs here. What has to change? Well, you need to. First, I find out who is this person, and if there's someone with dreadful nutrition and they've been living on candy bars and Cokes and French fries, that's most likely the reason that these microbes are are spreading. Do whatever needs to be done, clean up the wound, make sure that there are surgical, considerations there. But with all kinds of wound healing, including COVID, blood flow is so important. We're dynamic creatures. Remember, we've got blood that's meant to circulate. We have air that's meant to move in and out. We have urine that has to flow. Lymph fluid has to flow. Fluids have to flow. When they stagnate and they back up, that's when disease happens. That's when the infection starts. That's when the blood clots happen. So walking's important. Getting out for a walk every day, or getting on that treadmill, or get that heart beating, do some nice deep breathing, get enough sleep, again. And yes, sometimes some antibiotics are also indicated as well. But again, just tipping the balance, to help your own immune system is really, it's essential, and often it's all that's needed. And until you do that, all the antibiotics in the world are not going to help. If that person is just eating junky, fatty, sugary food, their diabetes is out of control, you can give them all the antibiotics you want. It's just not going to heal. So again, infections are a sign of it. It's like the red light on your dashboard of your car coming on, the oil, water, infection, pull over, deal with what's under the hood there, and it's something that needs attention. It usually diet and lifestyle.
I know there's a lot of antibiotics which aren't as effective anymore as they used to be. Can you share a little bit about why that's the case and why the reliance on it might not be there anymore?
The scientific name of our species is Homo sapiens. Homo means human or the man. Sapien, the word sapien means wise. If someone is sapient, they're wise. So Homo sapien, the wise one. Boy, talk about the most unwise thing we could do. We make hundreds of thousands of tons of antibiotics, lincomycin, tetracycline, these powerful medications. But do they go to people to be selectively used in infections? No, they are added to cattle feed and pig feed and chicken feed, because if you kill off the bacteria in the animal's guts, then more of the sugars in the grains you're feeding them will turn into fat, and so they'll weigh more at slaughter. So to increase the slaughter weight of these animals, millions of tons of antibiotics, these powerful antibiotics, are fed to farm animals to make cheap pork and beef and chicken. Well, talk about short-sighted, talk about unwise. Nature's got something to say about this. What do you do when you feed these animals these powerful antibiotics? You kill off all the microbes in their gut, except those few microbes which, by luck of the genetic draw, happen to be immune and be resistant to that antibiotic. Those are the ones that will survive by definition. So you select out the roughest, toughest antibiotic-resistant bacteria going, with the animals poop out, and when they're brought to slaughterhouse and they're eviscerated, all those antibiotic-resistant bacteria splatter all over the slaughterhouse cutting tables, and so it winds up on the surface of the steaks and the chops and the chicken breasts. They get sent to the market, and not all of them are killed when they're brought into the when people buy the chicken or the pork chop, and they bring it in and they slop it on their cutting board back and forth. Their whole cutting surfaces are now filled with antibiotic-resistant Salmonella, Shigella, E. coli, Clostridia, Enterococcus. These are powerful bacteria. And then we swallow them. They wind up on the knife that then cuts the fruit or the cheese or the lettuce. And we wind up seeding our own gut bacteria with this. And then, I'll tell you, this is so serious. In the hospital, when someone has an infection, when someone has pus out of a wound or infection in the urine, and you send it off to the laboratory, the microbiology lab, you get a report back with all the antibiotics listed there, amoxicillin, tetracycline, erythromycin, so and they have either little S for sensitive or R for resistant to let you know if those antibiotics work against your particular microbe. It is getting to be a scene out of a horror movie when you get the report back and you see all the antibiotics listed there, and you see R, 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 resistant, they're all resistant. And this guy's dying with 105 fever and shaking chills from sepsis in front of you that should respond to an antibiotic, but they don't work now. Why? Because we fed them to animals for cheap pork chops and cheeseburgers. My heaven, talk about Homo sapiens, the wise thing. That is the most squandering this gift. And we're on the edge of a time when a cellulitis in the hand or a strep throat is a death sentence, because there's nothing that we can do. This is the deal we made with the deal with the devil that we've made for our agriculture, for the almighty dollar, and we squandered this gift. So yes, that's the problem with that. You don't need to put antibiotics on broccoli. You don't need to feed streptomycin to lentils. This should all just disappear if we go plant-based. It's the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, and it's good to know that there is some hope, at least, even though this resistance exists against antibiotics.
And they're developing newer antibiotics, different kinds. But again, if they squander them, if they do the same thing with them, we're squandering this gift. And the slaughterhouses should disappear. The factory farm disappear. There's organizations, the Alliance for Agriculture is trying to help farmers transition from animal-based agriculture to plant-based agriculture. And that's what needs to happen. The era of animal eating is over. We need to turn that page and help these farmers and ranchers do something else with the land. I'll be glad to talk to you about that as time goes on here. But yeah, it's a sign that we need to move past that, to say the least.
Most definitely. So not only bacteria is giving us a sign, but viruses as well. So how does our body deal maybe with bacteria differently than with viruses? And then where do some of those viruses come from?
Wow. Very sophisticated questions. And the body, it knows, it's had a few million years to figure this out. And in our wonderful immune system, in our amazing bone marrow, we have all sorts of different cells, and some of them, in fact, most of them, are involved with the immune system. And these lymphocytes, that you find them in lymph nodes in our neck, in our tonsils, etc., in our spleen and liver. These lymphocytes are the ones that make the antibody proteins that cruise around and they mostly work against viruses. But there's another set of white blood cells called neutrophils, and these guys are the football squad that goes out and tackles bacteria personally, and the polymorphonuclear leukocytes, and they when there's a bacteria, and bacteria are much more sophisticated as far as compared to viruses. If you had a bacteria the size of the size of a huge beach ball, or about the size of your room, a virus is a dot that you can make with the point of a pencil compared to size-wise. Where bacteria is a living organism, it's got a nucleus and chromosomes and all sorts of things that a living cell has, a cell wall. It's an official living organism. Viruses aren't alive. They're just a little piece of RNA or DNA with a coated protein around them. That's all they are, and they're tiny, 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 tiny. So understanding that difference, you can see the body, the lymphocytes come up with the antibodies that go against the virus. It's just a hunter-killer protein. Where the big polymorphs, they'll mob onto a bacteria, and they'll read the surface sugars and the surface proteins on the surface of the bacteria, and they'll latch onto certain ones, and they'll inject enzymes into it. They're a street gang that just beats the bacteria into submission there. And when the bacteria has been killed, the white cells call in the demolition, the macrophages that come and clean up the area, and it all breaks it down to individual proteins, and it flows away in the lymph fluid. It's an elegant, powerful, amazing system that we've been given. And you don't even have to think about it. It's just don't mess with it, don't interfere with it. And so I think you asked earlier, what are the foods that do? Don't be eating lots of sugar as a food. Don't be eating cakes and candies and soda drinks and fruit juices. And don't flood your tissues with sugar. That does not help your immune system. Oils are not your friend. A couple of drops of sesame oil for flavoring, okay, maybe a teaspoon of olive oil. But don't be pouring tablespoons of olive oil on your pasta and think you're doing something heart healthy. It injures your artery walls, and it doesn't do great things for your immune system, I wouldn't imagine, by coating your lymphocytes with a film of oil around them. And just the processed foods in general, the chips and the schmips and the Cheetos and all that stuff. You look at the packages, the yellow number 3 dye and the anti-caking agents and the dough conditioners and colorings and the flavoring. Your immune system's got enough to deal with. Don't be putting all those molecules through your tissues either. So it's the processed foods, the fast oils, the excessive sugars. Eat whole plant foods. If it grew out of the garden, there's a tomato, there's a cucumber, there's some string beans. That's what you want to eat. If you can call it by name when it was growing in the garden, you're safe. And so those are the foods that'll make your immune system the strongest. Let's see, did I answer your question there as far as what foods?
Yeah.
Bacteria versus viruses. They're two different systems. Same thing. Don't screw them up with a bunch of sugar and oil and lack of sleep and all that stuff. Let both the virus guys, the lymphocytes and the neutrophils do their thing. Give them what they need. Don't mess with them. You'll be fine.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it sounds like the system is always working.
It is.
It's up to us to determine what it's working on. And by giving it the wrong thing to work on, we're going to jeopardize our health later on if we face something like a coronavirus. That is very fascinating. And you mentioned movement and the importance of blood circulation. Can you talk a little bit about like how much movement do we need a day?
Yeah.
Do we know at what point do we see benefits, or at what point do we see decreasing benefits?
That's important. When you look at this human body, we're meant to move. And look at all the wild animals. Look at chimpanzees, gorillas. They are moving all day. From the moment they get up, they are moving. And we used to do that. 100 years ago, certainly 200 years ago, you and I wouldn't be sitting in front of a computer. We would be out gathering firewood. We've been up on the roof doing the thatching. We would in the garden lifting buckets of soil, using heavy tools. We were physically active human beings back then. We had to be if you want to eat and stay warm at night. And anything that approaches that kind of movement is going to be good. I'll put a pin in that for a minute. Look at where we've come to. Hour after hour, we sit in front of the computer. We sit. When we travel, we drive and sit. When we work, we sit. When we eat, we sit. When we answer our email, we sit. When we watch the news and get depressed, we sit. We sit all day. Well, gravity is relentless. We not only stop our muscular movement, but as we sit hour after hour, blood pools down in our leg veins. It pools down in the pelvic veins. The guys get engorgement of the veins around the prostate gland, and secretions may pool it. The guys with the chronic prostatitis, I think prolonged sitting is one problem with that. Women with fibroids, etc., you don't want to be sitting hour after hour. It gets congested down there. The varicose vein folks, it's an abnormal. These are inevitable consequences of abnormal things that we're asking this body to do that we really weren't designed to do. So anything that recreates a semi-active life, at least once a day, get outside and go for a walk. Now, you need the sunshine on your face. You need to hear the birds. You need to be out in the natural world. We suffer from NDD, nature deficit disorder, and so that's essential. But even inside, every hour get up, do something to get your heart up a few beats there. Hold on to the desk and do a few squats. At least, sit up straight, put your arms up, take a few deep breaths. Movement is good, on any level. Well, it translates into a 20-minute walk, half-hour walk. And even I've read studies that even 3 minutes or 5 minutes several times during the day, if it totals 20 minutes, it's better than nothing. So all movement is to find. Someone said, what's the best exercise to do? The one the person will actually do is the best exercise. So whatever you like to do, do a Zumba, whatever, anything. Just move as much as you can. It really is important.
Hmm. And it's good to know that the benefits can be achieved at a fairly minimal level. Everybody
Really,
can do that.
really,
Uh,
absolutely, absolutely. So,
yeah, fascinating. You mentioned earlier that if the blood doesn't circulate, it's necessary to bring, I guess, the white blood cells to certain areas, or also to transport certain things away from, let's say, inflammation. And there's also another system in the body, the lymphatic system, which I understand doesn't have a pump like the heart. Is that also a reason why we should be moving? And does it play a role in our immunity?
oh, Professor, very astute. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very profound observation. Yes, the we go through all physiology 101. But in our blood, most of our blood is liquid. It's water in the form called plasma, and the plasma oozes out into from the tiny little capillaries to bathe the cells, the muscle cells, the liver cells, heart cells, kidney cells. And most of that plasma is reabsorbed back into the venous blood and brought back to the heart. But not all of it. And some of the plasma stays in the tissues, and that's called lymph fluid. And that moves back up through a series of channels near our blood vessels, and it's a very important circulation of this fluid. It cleanses the cells and the tissues that are a little away from the blood vessels there. And there's this constant subtle river of fluid moving from our extremities up towards the heart. All these lymphatic channels eventually meet in the thoracic duct, and it eventually winds up back in the bloodstream. But what makes this fluid move up from our legs? Well, it's the action of our leg muscles as they're moving, as you're walking. The contraction of the muscles is pumping the lymphatic fluid, and lymphatic fluid have little lymphatic channels have little valves in them that are just one-way valves pointing upward. So as the muscles contract, the lymph fluid is pushed upward, but when it tries to fall back down, the little valve leaflets come together, and so they keep the fluid moving up until it finally rejoins the blood flow. It's one of these another elegant systems that you read about it. You put the book down, and you it's so brilliant. Well, in the lymph flow, in these channels, every so often there's a lymph node, which is shaped like a lima bean. And it's filled with these lymphocytes that make antibodies and do other things to help filter out germs. And when people have a sore throat, their lymph glands get big. Or you have a infection, your lymph glands on your arm will get big. That's your immune system going to work for you there. And so, again, drink enough water, move. That lymph system's meant to protect you, but it's just asking again of water, enough movement, and the nutrients to make healthy lymphocytes there. So it's another self-regulating system. We are just miracles. We are miraculous creatures. I wish we would all appreciate it, how special each of us is, and how and that person across from you, no matter what their skin color is, no matter what language, they are a freaking miracle. Their lymphocytes are working for them. Their IgA antibodies are being secreted. The miracle of life is going on in each of us. That's enough to treat each other with respect and love, that's where our focus should be. So this is very humble and appreciative because of what I know is going on inside the body.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think everyone can resonate with it more than ever. I think now we feel alone, but once you see people outside and they're smiling and they're having a good time, even if like you're not close to them, but it still feels great. And I think maybe there's some silver lining in all of this.
I think there is.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that there are certain minerals or certain compounds in our food that we should maybe look out specifically for. I know you say it's the whole of a plant-based diet that is going to support the immune system. But if you were to pinpoint a few things that maybe even someone on a plant-based diet should look out for, what would those be?
Well, already mentioned, vitamin D is important. You need it not only for calcium balance, but the membrane integrity of your skin, your mucous membranes, and immune system requires vitamin D. It's a hormone. It's made when sunlight falls on your skin. We're going into the spring and summer seasons. Another reason, get out every morning and take that half-hour walk and let some sun get on your face and your arms. Make your own vitamin D. That's by far the best natural way to do it. But if for any reason you just can't, or the weather won't allow it or whatever, then taking a low potency a multivitamin that's got 2,000 international units of vitamin D in it is a good thing to do. And I don't want to make everybody scramble for supplements here, but zinc is important. Eat lots of beans and grains for zinc. But if you are taking a multivitamin, you should probably have 15 milligrams of zinc in it. And I have a couple of Brazil nuts every day for the selenium. They're also important. And of course, if you're plant-based, you need some B12, but you ought to be taking that anyway, 1,000 micrograms once or twice a week. Those are the main ones that I would mention here, the D, the zinc, and the B12. Again, on protein, you need enough greens because there's thousands of other vitamins and minerals in the whole plant foods that we need but aren't on the vitamin label. And finally, you mentioned silver lining. This is a horrible ordeal. I have great concerns about where we're going from here. But one thing is I noticed that, again, it's almost poetic. It's really focusing on the slaughterhouses. And I feel so bad for those people who are forced to walk in there and work in there. But because of the disruption, there's going to be a point that those workers are not going to go in there. And the slaughterhouses will shut down. And there's getting to be short meat. The supplies of meat counters are bare. Well, it's going to force people. There's nothing to eat. Yes, there is, and it's going to force the folks to make great bean chilies and lentil stews and hummus and nourish themselves on plant foods, which one they may get to like. But also, they're going to wind up leaner and healthier. Their diabetes are going to go away. Their blood pressure will go to normal. They're going to come out of this leaner and healthier. Look at what a plant-based diet did for us. They didn't choose it. COVID chose it for them. But if there's any silver lining, that might be one of them, that we might be a lot more open to nourishing ourselves on plant-based foods, and that would be a blessing on so many levels. Oh, you asked where these viruses come from. They all are animal viruses. These are all percolating from our unnatural encroachment on the natural world. We go into the African rainforest and kill the monkeys and eat them and wind up with Ebola and HIV. We go into Asia, we pull bats off the cage. They're teeming with viruses. We put them in those dreadful wet markets and they poop on the pangolins. The pangolins eat it inside their bodies. The viruses, pangolin viruses and bat viruses get together and produce these novel viruses. This one's a nasty one. This one will clot your blood in your veins. This one will put you on dialysis. It's not the flu. Most people, it's very mild, but the folks that get in trouble with it, it's a fiendish virus. We'll deal with it one way or the other. But the point is, then the bigger issue is that as we speak, not in some Asian wet market, but in our very own American factory farm sheds, where you got 100,000 chickens in one shed and 8,000 hogs in one shed. These animals are sick, and those chickens are coughing, and those pigs are having diarrhea, and they are pooping out viruses they'll mix with the wild duck viruses flying over the barnyard there, and the next virus that jumps out. We were made in America right across its chest from one of these factory farm operations. This one where COVID only kills one in every 100 people. This one's going to kill one every second or third one, and it's going to tear our society apart. Doctors won't go to the hospital, policemen won't report to work. We're this close. This has been a warning shot from the animals about these factory farms, and I say how nice we'll learn to live on plants. That's exactly what's being asked of us. We need to shut down these factory farm operations before the next one jumps out that will make COVID look like runny nose. So we're at a choice point. It's so important that podcasts like this put this information in people's head and get them thinking about it. It's no longer a social nicety. I don't eat meat anymore. It is time to turn the page on that. It's got to be something we used to do. We used to kill whales. We used to buy and sell black people. We used to do a lot of things that we just don't think about anymore. It faded into history. Large-scale animal agriculture has got to be one of those. And let's help the farmers and ranchers transition, do something else with that land, grow fruit trees, grow broccoli, grow hemp, grow something else with that land instead of animals. And that's the real net. That will really save us. And this will be the last pandemic we'll have to face. So thanks for asking where these come from. They come from the animals, and time to be nice to them. And this law of the spirit.
Yeah, and I always find it fascinating if a human DNA is compared to an animal DNA, how much overlap there is. And the difference is so minor. So it's no surprise that viruses that affect animals can also affect humans. So maybe as a way to end this, what would you say to someone? What can they do to protect themselves nowadays, their families, and maybe not just from a systemic perspective, but from a personal perspective? What would you recommend?
Absolutely. Again, your immune system is your internal coat of armor here, and your body's never not looking. As Shakespeare said, "To thine own self be true." Dr. Klaper said, "Health be true, immune system be true." So do those things we mentioned: get enough sleep, drink enough water, eat a lot of fresh foods, stress as little as you can. Spruce up your immune system, go for those walks. Really important. And that not only helps you, it sets a good example for the people you're living with and the people around you. Don't have to. It's not a time for finger wagging. It's time to set a good example. And that salad there, that's medicine for my immune system. Oh, that kale there, that's medicine for my immune system. When Hippocrates said, "Let food be your medicine and medicine be your food," that's what he's talking about. That lentil stew, that's medicine for my immune system. And so, get yourself nice and strong, set a good example. And we are all united here. We're seeing that. Help the people around you. Help send money to the local food bank. There's millions of people who don't know where their next meal's coming from. Volunteer at the food bank, or at least send them some money. Check in on your neighbors. Do they have enough food? Are they doing okay there? Is there anything you can do to help? This is a time to reach out and help someone, and we all benefit from that. So eat those plants, set a good example, and love as much as you can, and we'll get through this, and hopefully we'll learn the lessons and have a healthier world when we come out from the other side of this tunnel here that we're in.
Most certainly. Thank you so much, Dr. Klaper.
Oh, you're so welcome. Well done, Tobias, and good to be with you, and all the best to you and your listeners. Thanks so much.
We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. A wise man once said, "You make a new life by making new choices." Now, if you know that what you eat matters, if you know that health comes from healthy living, then the time to make new choices is now. And just imagine owning the summit for life. Click the button for more. Maybe you know our stories. Luke and I lost family to cancer, and we wish we would have known sooner what you are learning here today. So please, share the summit, take action, and let's support each other. Thank you. This is Toby and Luke signing off, and we can't wait to see you for the next presentation.